Hey, and welcome to I Was Just Thinking. My name is Heather Deveaux, and I was just thinking about, I don't even want to say it, business. We're going to talk about business. It's my favorite thing ever to talk about, and no matter how hard I try, I can't turn the 98% of my brain off that loves a good entrepreneurship discussion. I have tried. I have tried doing other things, and yet I always end up back here. So we're not going to fight it because this podcast is just all about whatever I'm thinking about, and I'm going to talk about business today. But there's a very good reason why I'm going to do that, because some things have happened over the last couple of weeks that have just blown the roof off of my thought process. And I am kind of thinking out loud in real time here on this podcast. There's a little more introspection and structure, I would say, happening over on the blog at heatherdeveaux.com. But I actually haven't written anything about this yet. So we're going kind of raw dogging this discussion, which is my favorite way to do this stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with my son about something completely unrelated to business that evolved into a conversation about business. And it went a little something like this. So he's graduating high school this year, and things are moving, side note, things are moving very quickly. And I am like really uncomfortable with like how fast this is happening, and I'm dealing with that in my own time and in my own way. But what I find very interesting is how quickly these things are happening. And also I'm doing all this other stuff in my life with this sabbatical, with my business, which I'm going to talk about here today. And so when this comes up in this sort of context of my son, I am continually surprised by the sage advice or the sage insight that my 17-year-old kid has. And I shouldn't be surprised because, like, I'm smart, so, like, obviously he's smart, but I don't remember having this kind of insight when I was 17, so I feel like it's a proud mama moment for sure. And so I'm having this conversation with my son about his graduating class, and he says this really random thing to me. He says, you know, the way that the graduating class is communicating with each other is through Snapchat. And I thought to myself, well, that's weird. Like, have they heard of Slack? Like, do they not know about Discord? Like, there just seems to be 1,000 other ways that kids today would communicate. And no, they decided to go with Snapchat. So no judgment, whatever. I don't know what kids are doing. But my kid has a problem with it. He doesn't like that that's what's happening because he feels like the platform is just ridiculous. And I don't have Snapchat. I haven't had Snapchat before, so I can't really say too much about it, but he does not like it. And just for some context, he's not on social media at all, except whatever that blue sky thing is, which we're like living in the dark ages over here, him and I. We don't have a lot of engagement on social media, and he doesn't even have social media besides whatever this blue sky thing is. So anyway, because he's graduating and he needs to see about the, you know, the announcements or whatever. So he downloads Snapchat and he just fucking hates it. So he says to me, you know, I just think like there are better ways to do this, and I want to tell them that they could have done this differently, like something from this decade, you know? And I kind of laughed and I said, you got to pay attention to that stuff, even when you're young, because those are very telling signs that there might be something more for you. And when you go out into the world and you start working, you might come up against some resistance around the way other people are doing things. And I just said off the cuff, this is why I work for myself. And what I actually said was, this is why I have to work for myself, because I have experienced many times in a much bigger, broader sense, the Snapchat issue of you're choosing to use Snapchat as your mode of communication. And that just like doesn't fit. And if I was going to do it, how would I do it differently? And so this is how I kind of get into my journey of entrepreneurship on a full-time basis, because I have always had side hustles, you know, as it were. But when I first get into full-time entrepreneurship, when I like dove into it and was like, this is how I'm going to support myself, it was because of something that had happened at my job that my burning thought was, if I did this for myself, I would do this so much differently. And then my final thought was, if I did half the work these guys are doing, I would be successful. And if I worked half as hard for myself as I did for these people who just fucking shit the bed, I would be very successful. And anyway, long story short, that turned out to be very true. And so when I talked to my son about paying attention to these little insignificant seeming moments now at 17, that there are things that he's going to encounter in life that are going to tell him that maybe entrepreneurship is the way to go for him. And I'm not going to push him in any direction. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think he's going to make a great entrepreneur, but I think he has to come to that on his own, and maybe he'll never land there because he has different, ambitions than I do, which is fine. But for this conversation, when I said to him, you pay attention to those things because later in life that's going to be important as you begin to work and you work for other people. And that's why I have to work for myself, because I can't handle when people are like, just use Snapchat as an example, which I would never. And he says, yes, but that's fine for you because when you work, you make a lot of money in your business and you have been building that business for a long time and you know what you're doing. But when you're just starting out, it's very hard. And it's, you don't start out where you are now. You started out in a different place. And so you would have made different decisions before. And I was like, yeah, right. And he went, yeah, but now you've got this whole thing and it's working really well for you and you get to do whatever you want and you make a lot of money. And he just kind of went on like that for a couple of seconds. And I just stood there on my front step. We were coming into the house and I was gawking at him. And I was like, yeah, that's true. I mean, I knew that was true, but to hear that mirrored back to me that way in such a clear and obvious way was kind of funny to me. And then it just shook me to my core in a way that I have never experienced before, when I was like, maybe I need to think about this a little bit more, because over the last several weeks, I have been leaning more and more towards, I'm not going back to instructional design. And I may have even said that on the podcast, that I'm definitely looking for something else. And in my life, I have been looking for something else. I have been considering going back to school. I have been considering taking a job, and I have been considering partnering with people, and I've been considering buying a business and doing all these different things so that I have the feeling of something new. And I had to really sit with this feeling of, what is that about? Where does that wanting to start over come from? And I don't quite know the answer to that yet, but I am leaving that open as I continue to explore what I'm doing here. So this idea that I want something new again, or I need to reimagine my life again, is top of mind for me right now. And this conversation with my son is kind of driving all the action I'm taking right now, funny enough. So what happened after that conversation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. It really should not have surprised me, because I have raised him to be someone who looks at the world in front of him, sizes it up and understands what he sees and questions it and criticizes it and, Snapchat, and also appreciates things. And so he looks at me and he looks at my business and he thinks I could have that later. I can't have that now. And fair, most people have to work their way up. I'm not going to say yes or no to that, but his thought process is that you don't start out that way. And that was true of me. I didn't start out that way. I started out charging $10 an hour from my kitchen table. And when I went on this sabbatical this year, I was charging $50,000 a project. So that's a far cry from $10 an hour. And my kid has watched me do this over the last 10 years. And he has watched the evolution of my business sort of, to and fro and up and down and inside and out and this, and then it's that, and now it's this, and just all the different ways that something evolves. He has watched that and he has heard me talk about this. And you kind of forget that sometimes little ears are listening and little eyes are watching. And I always have this really proud moment when I realize he has seen me do this. And I have done this on my own, and I have worked really hard, and I have built this vision for myself, and I've actually built it. I didn't just have the vision. I actually built the vision in the world. I grew my business from a little idea, very little idea, charging $10 an hour, to closing $50,000 deals. And I closed so many $50,000 deals this year that I was like, I'm going to just take the rest of the year off. And he saw that. He knows I'm not working right now. He knows I'm just kind of fucking around and finding out. And he knows that I'm exploring all these other things in my life. And sometimes I forget that as a mom, when I'm doing stuff, that like he sees it, because he just always looks like he's not paying attention, but he is totally paying attention. So for him to have mirrored that back to me was very jarring, and also like proud mama moment. But it set me on this journey for the last couple of weeks that I had to really sit and stop and think, what am I doing with this business? Not because I have to. I'm not there yet. You heard me talk about my threshold and my values in the last episode, talking about when I get to $20,000, I'm going to think about going back to work. But instead, I thought, rather than waiting, because I can't wait. I have this idea now. I have to follow through. I have to see what happens. I have to see where this takes me. Rather than waiting, I'm going to use some of my sabbatical time to reimagine this business. And so Heather Deveaux Instructional Design is the consulting company that I have built and imagined and reimagined several times. And it has had many names over the years, but the premise has always been the same. And I have talked about this in the podcast too. The premise has always been the same. It's always revolved around education, adult education in particular, curriculum development, course design, doing instructional design, helping people develop learning pathways. I have done everything from written reports for universities to created plans for execution to done policy and procedure to written courses to do government policy to do military training, like everything. I've done everything. And I have been doing this for 25 years. And I know that seems like, how is that possible? But I have been teaching, been doing adult education since I was 18 years old. And it has taken on many forms over the years. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's all I know, but it is the backbone of everything I have done. And when I have taken a different job and a different role, it has been informed by the fact that I have all of this experience in education, in adult education, curriculum development, instructional design, etc. And I have really picked that apart over the years. And recently, in the creative sabbatical that I'm engaging in, I've picked that apart and really found the pieces of that, the self-reflection pieces, the self-study pieces, why this is such important work to me, how it's informed what I'm doing, how it informs my values and my decisions, and how it informs how I live my life, like all of these things. And at the end of the day, it's just a job. It's just how I make money. It's no big deal to me. And yet lots of people pay me lots of money to do it for them. And so I sit down and I think about Heather Deveaux Instructional Design, and I start imagining, just for the fucking hell of it, what would this look like if I was going to keep doing it? Because the thought I have had, quite honestly, over the last several months is, as I have come to terms with being on this sabbatical and not letting myself imagine or reimagine Heather Deveaux Instructional Design, I've become sort of resigned to the fact that I'm probably not going back to this thing. I'm going to create something new. I'm going to do something else. And so I hadn't been thinking about when I go back to Heather Deveaux Instructional Design. And I went so far as to delete my website, delete my LinkedIn account for my business. And I got a letter in the mail before Canada Post went on strike. Fuck you very much. Before it went on strike, I got a letter in the mail saying it was time to renew my business name, my registration, ownership of the business, Heather Deveaux Instructional Design, and I put it aside and I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let it lapse. Because if I start a new business, or if I come back to business, it will be different. And so I had kind of created this scenario in my head where I'm just not going to do this work anymore. I've done it for 25 years. It's time for something else. Please God, let it be anything else, you know? So I have this conversation with my son, and it forces me, or like I latch onto it for some fucking reason. And I start thinking about, what does it look like if I reimagine this business? If I was going to build it again, which a lot of people talk about, if you're going to start again. And I don't want to go back to being a beginner, actually. My son summed it up beautifully. When you're starting out, it's really hard, and you have to prove yourself, and you have to figure things out. And I don't have to figure anything out at this point. Like, I could do my job as an instructional designer, curriculum developer, course creator, as a business owner, which is a separate skill from all of my skills I have. I don't have to figure anything out. Like, I could fucking launch something tomorrow and it would be successful because I know how to do it. It took me 10 years to have that kind of confidence, but I know now anything I do, it would be successful. I just have to be willing to do the work. And when I thought about that, and I thought about my son's comment of starting out and building your way through something and creating something, those are all the things that I thought about too. Was when I was making $10 an hour, that $10 an hour meant everything to me. And when I was making $50,000 a project, that $50,000 a project meant everything to me because I built it. I created something from nothing. And I get paid to create something from nothing, which is one of my favorite things ever. So I sit and I think about Heather Deveaux Instructional Design. And the idea of Deveaux Learning Solutions comes to my mind. And it took no time at all. None. Zero. It just popped into my head. If I was going to keep doing this, how would I do it differently? Not what would I build from scratch, but how would I do it differently? And this is where the adult education thread really comes in for me, because such an underlying theme and core of adult education is self-reflection and self-study and making meaning and finding relevance in what you're doing. And when I think about business, it is something that I hold dear to my heart, and I love it. Even when I wasn't good at it, I loved it. I loved learning about it. I loved trudging my way through. I loved fighting for every dollar I was making. I just thought it was such a great way to live my life. And when I thought about this business of what would I take with me and what would I leave, it became clear to me why I had decided to engage in this creative sabbatical in the first place. And money aside, there were things that I was allowing to happen in my business, even though I'm in charge, large and in charge. There were things that I was allowing to happen in my business that were making it difficult for me to enjoy the process. And it was making it difficult for me to make decisions because I felt like I was at the mercy of some clients, not all, some, and their asks. And rather than just change it, I kind of just put the guillotine to it and said, I'm done. And that is unusual for me, to be quite honest. As much as I am happy to burn something down and walk away from it, the idea of walking away from business, I think the reason it's taken me so long to get here is because I kept trying to tell myself that I could do something else. And a part of me didn't believe that. A part of me didn't believe that I would go get a job. I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but a part of me, as much as I would say, like, am I going to get a job? That was just fucking words coming out of my mouth. There's no way. There's just no way. I know too much about myself to know that I could sign up for Snapchat and use it every day with a smile on my face because some fucker told me I needed to use it to do my job. I just know that about myself. And my son reaffirmed that back to me, that like, we got to do this our way. And if that means we got to burn it down and build it back up, then we're going to do that. But it probably in this case doesn't, because I have built the machine. I have built the reputation. I have created the system that brings in the kind of money that I only need to work on one or two things a year, and then I can take the rest of the year off. And so when I think about that, I think about this new evolution, this new version, not a restart, not a rebuild, just an evolution. And one of the things I had thought about this time last year was renaming and rebranding Heather Deveaux Instructional Design to the point where I started talking about it. And I had talked about it with a good friend of mine. We meet every month to chat. And I was talking about wanting to sort of have this blanket term because instructional design, maybe you don't even know what that is, but it's the design of learning. It's the systems that we use and the processes that we put in place to help people learn. It is separate from curriculum development, and it is separate from course creation, and it is separate from research. It's just one step in the whole process of creating learning. And I just happen to be someone who can do all of the steps, which is why I make so much money. I can be contacted by a client who says, we want to create a course, and they've contacted Heather Deveaux Instructional Design, and they think I need an instructional designer, but they need the whole thing. They need the whole system. And so what I've done over the years is reimagined my business and added to it a lot of things, like a lot of services under one branch. And I thought about, I want to get back into training, and I want to get back into coaching, and I want to do these things that at some point or other I had done and had really enjoyed and got away from for one reason or another. And so this time last year I had thought, I think I'm going to rename and rebrand to Heather Deveaux Learning and Development. And I played with that a little bit, and I even made an announcement on LinkedIn, like, I think I'm going to do this. And then I quickly rescinded it and said, no, I actually don't need to change the name. Like, that's busy work. And I think at the time it was busy work. I think you needed to think about the business from a different perspective, but I was thinking about it from the wrong perspective. I was thinking about just shifting the name. And to be clear, there was nothing broken. Like, I wasn't trying to fix anything, which is how we tend to come to these things. We think something is broken, and then we think we'll fix it by rebranding. But I was doing this work last year thinking about, like, I need to shift the business. It's time to make a change. When it came down to it, I just decided, actually, I'm not going to do that. And I can't remember why I didn't do it. I just thought, like, fuck it. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to double down on what I'm doing. It was probably around the same time, actually. Yes, this is true. This is what happened, actually, now that I'm remembering the timeline. It happened around the same time that I came up short in my cash flow because I had lost all those contracts. And I thought, oh, I better change something. And I ended up not doing that. I ended up just doubling down on what I had done, waiting it out, being patient, looking for the next contract. And so that is why that happened. And now that I'm reflecting on it, I hadn't considered the timeline there, but that is why that happened. And so when I think about that, I think, like, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. There was a trigger. I needed to respond to it. And instead, what I did is I doubled down because, like, I knew my systems work. I knew I had some goals. I knew that this was just like a fucked up situation. And it was heavily influenced by what was going on with the nonprofits in the United States at the time. And there was a lot of funding cuts. And so there was nothing really that I could control in my business to make that better. I just had to go out and find more work. And so that's what I did. And so that turned out well, obviously, because here I am sitting here doing nothing. So just living on the fruits of my labor. And so when I came to this conclusion this year, that actually, yes, part of the reason I wanted to take some time off was that I had to regroup and I had to rethink and I had to reassess. And I wanted to reimagine my life from the ground up. I wanted to, if I had a chance to do it all over again, I wanted to have that thought of, if I had the chance to do it all over again, what would I do? And for the last 6 months, I have been pushing back on this thought of run a business, run a business, run a business. I really was like, I want to do anything else. I want to paint a painting. I want to write a book. I've done all that stuff, but wanted it to be like the focus. And a part of me the whole time has been like, yeah, and find a way to monetize it. Yeah, and find a way to monetize it. Yeah, and let's find a way to turn it into a business. And yet I'm sitting on this business that I have just put to bed, calling it done. And then my goddamn kid's like, yeah, but like, you're killing it. And I was like, oh, fuck, I am killing it. Fuck. What am I doing? Why am I doing that? So super, super interesting. And so Deveaux Learning Solutions pops into my head. And I think not about burning it down. Heather Deveaux Instructional Design doesn't exist on the internet, but it exists in reality. It is still a thing. And I thought, what do I want to do? What do I want to take with me? What have I learned? What have I wanted to drop? What is it that I want to evolve? What is it that I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? And how much money do I want to charge to do that? And so I've spent the last couple of weeks doing that, answering those questions, thinking about if I were to change the business, not close it, not burn it down, not start again, but just change it, what would I do? And it's really hard when you're trying to do something like this to say to yourself, or to not say to yourself, if I was to start again, because that is the default, I think. If I were to reimagine this, if I could take what I know now and do it again, and that's just fucking impossible. And my son reminded me of that. And so rather than going wide, which I think a lot of us do if you're a business owner, I don't know, this isn't a business podcast, we're just talking about it today. But if you go wide, you offer all these different things versus going deep, which is what I had done. I had spent the last 5 years, which is mind-blowing to me, by the way. Like, I thought I had only been doing this part of my business for a couple of years, but it turns out it's going on 6. It's going on 6 years that I've been running Heather Deveaux Instructional Design. And I literally had to fact check that. I had to go back into my account for joint stocks and see, and sure as shit, I've been doing this fucking shit since 2020. This business name, this business structure, which has changed internally, but the name has stayed the same. And so I've been doing this for 6 years and was like, yeah, I keep thinking like more and more and more. But then the last 2 to 3 years has been, no. Less is more, and charge more for less, and streamline systems and make it better. And I had this machine running to the point where I don't even have to work in it 6 months of the year. And when I had that thought, it became very clear to me that that was the thing I had been striving for all along. Work as little as possible. And look, I know how that sounds, but like, that is the fucking dream. Work as little as possible. Live the life I want to live. Fund my crazy dreams. Do good work, have great clients, have a fantastic reputation, be someone who gets shit done, and have fun while doing it. And when I thought Deveaux Learning Solutions, I thought, that's it. Well, I'm doing that now. And when I tell you that I had to stop myself and slow my roll, that is the truth. I was like, I need to like do something here, because I'm going to sit at my computer and I'm going to rebuild and reimagine and evolve and change and create Deveaux Learning Solutions. I'm just going to spend all my time doing it because that's how my brain works. And so instead of doing that, I booked a trip out west. Because that's the whole fucking point, right? The whole fucking point is, and I want to go for a trip out west because it's my favorite time of year out there. I actually haven't been to the mountains out west in 2 years, which is bonkers to me. I haven't been there in 2 years. And so I booked a trip. I booked it on like a Tuesday. I went out last Saturday and I was there until the Tuesday. So I went for boots on the ground, 48 hours, not including travel days. And I had a great time, and I got a lot of clarity, and I was able to rest, and I drove through the mountains for 7 hours. I drove out to British Columbia from Alberta, went all the way to Glacier National Park, and then drove back to Canmore. I had this really great Airbnb. It was fucking beautiful, and I had some really good food. I can still taste the Greek food that I ate last week on like Sunday or Monday. I can still taste it. It was so strong, so good. And so I was like, I need to like not hunker down into this idea. I need to do something else. I need to live in the moment I have created for myself, with the money I have created for myself, with the business that I have created. And so I went. I just was like, fuck it. I booked it. I got a first class ticket because like, why not? And I went, I rented a car, and I had a nice Airbnb, and I had a really great time. And then when I got home, so Tuesday, so today's now Monday. It's been a week now since I've been home. I get home and I'm like, okay, now we're cooking. Now I've like cleared my mind. I've gotten some space. I have resisted the urge, like good for me. I can't even tell you how big of a deal that is. I've resisted the urge to just start creating, and I'm going to do it. And so I started doing it, and I started with buying the domain and sending a request to change the name of my business and thinking about, I dug deep, 10 years of Google Drive files, guys. I went in 10 years deep looking at my files and being like, what do I got here? And so this has been super fun. Just like, this is my cup of tea, looking at information and restructuring it. So I'm basically treating myself like my own client right now, looking at my business, looking at my content, looking at my structure, looking at my infrastructure, looking at all of my systems and my processes and my frameworks. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of what stays and what goes. So I can further refine, so I can get to a place where I can have more years like this. And that is not crazy. That is not pie in the sky. I am doing it right now. I got my business to a point where, with so many contracts and like not a lot, just two contracts, I was like, fuck it, I'm taking the year off. Taking the rest of the year off. And so what does it look like if instead of going back to a business that runs, I wasn't even working that much to begin with, a couple of days a week, maybe. What does it look like to go from always in growth mode to just, this is how I live? And that was the shift. And that was what I think my son was saying without even realize he was saying it, without, the depth of his insight, was that you've put in the work and now you've got this life. And I thought I put in the work and I'm being rewarded at the back end of that with this time off. And never once did it occur to me, this is the truth, it didn't occur to me that like I could just keep doing that. That come January, I could just get another contract and then take the next 6 months off. And so that's what I think I'm going to do. And it's still evolving and it's still, trying to become a thing in my brain. And I'm trying to wrap my head around what does that actually look like. And in order to satisfy the parts of my brain that are like, and now we want to coach, and now we want to teach, and maybe we want to run a workshop, and maybe we want to do an event. Like, there's so many things I want to do under the brand of business, not creative sabbatical, but actual business, money-making business, that I just want to give myself the room to do it and stop thinking that, I have gone so far down this silo that I can't come back up. And that's just not at all how I work. I'm fucking up and down that silo all the time. I don't know why I have boxed myself in this way. But the thought that I would, quote, go back to work like it was going to be rigorous or it was going to be different than what I had created, I've really landed on the place where like, well, I figured it out. I have figured out how to get to a place in my business where I work for a few months and then don't work for the rest of the time and just live on my money. And maybe that sounds crazy, but like that has always been the dream for me. Just make enough money to live. I don't care about the rest. I don't need millions of dollars. Could I make $1 million in this business? You're fucking right, I could. And I can see that now. You're fucking right, I could. But like, I don't actually need that much money to live the kind of life that I want. And so I'm kind of just exploring that now, that balance of how much do I want versus how much do I need versus what do I want to do to make that money versus what do I not want to do to make that money. And have just, the only decision I have made really is that Deveaux Learning Solutions, DLS, which I'm calling Deveaux for short. I'll explain another day why it's called that, which I love. Deveaux Learning Solutions is the thing. It's the container, the business. It's official. I have renamed Heather Deveaux Instructional Design, and like that's all I've got. I got a domain. I got a name. I have a general vague idea of what this is going to look like, but I'm not in a rush. And in fact, I'm not planning to do anything about it in any hardcore scenario until the new year, because I don't know if you got the memo, but like I'm taking the year off and I fully intend to keep doing that. I'm gonna work on this on the background, but I'm not gonna let it be my focus despite it nailing itself into my brain. Like, please give me attention. No, fuck off. We're on vacation, okay? We're on vacation, sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively. But that's what's going on. And I'm pretty excited about it. And I am thrilled that I have enough wherewithal and emotional control and a handle on my brain that I can say, okay, cool. I've made the decision. That's cool. And then we don't got to do anything about it. We don't got to freak out about it. We don't got to go hustle mode. We don't got to relaunch. None of that. It's just, I think I made a post on LinkedIn, was like, well, fucking joke's on me, I guess. So funny. I'm just like really excited about it in a way that I can't believe, to be honest. And I'm just going to let it keep simmering. I'm going to see what comes to the surface. I'm going to see what, when I sit down to think about what do I want to keep and what do I want to let go, and knowing how I want to work now, that I can live in a place where business is not consuming, it is life-giving. I want to see what that looks like. And I mean, I've got the model here. I'm doing it now, but I want to look at it now through the lens of, oh shit, this is a business model. This isn't just a thing I'm doing. This is like a business model where I work a few months of the year and take the rest of the year off. And I got to tell you, I've been real surprised that I didn't see it until my kid pointed it out. But I'm so glad he did. I'm so glad he did. And when I think back to past versions of Heather, thinking about running her own show and reading books and doing self-help and doing professional development, and trying to get to a place where this is how I want to live my life, no matter how it sounds to other people. Because I know what it sounds like, and fuck, I don't care. I know how it sounds. When I think about past Heather, who wanted that for herself and then got it, I think that's why it was so easy for me to just say, like, I'm going to close this chapter and take some time off. And the piece I missed was that wasn't a closing of a chapter. It was the development of the business model I had been thinking about for a really long time, and just didn't realize what I had created until a 17-year-old boy pointed it out to me. So there you go. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon.